Hey everybody, I am Vince of Geekvolution, and welcome to Horror Movie Rewind. Warning, some of these images may be graphic. Since horror has several subgenres, I feel justified in starting my series with an early classic. That's right, Tobe Hooper's 1974 film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, you might be thinking, Vince, what gives you the right to cast judgment on a classic? Who do you think you are to rate one of the most influential horror films of all time? What gives you the right? Well, I have a microphone. And let's face it, you're curious. With its extreme violence, displays of the abject, and use of an inexplicably faceless killer, Texas Chainsaw Massacre jump-started a new genre, the slasher film. Don't get me wrong, it's not the first film to give us ghastly displays of violence. When the production code relaxed, violence was given its day to play, and let's not forget that the production code was started for a reason. This was just the first time that the presentation of violence lent itself to the largely unprovoked murder of slasher films. The film is presented as a true story, which I assure you it is not. The character Leatherface was based loosely on famous murderer Ed Gein, who was neither a butcher nor a cannibal. He wasn't even from Texas. Gein is also infamous for his grave robbing, from which he used the corpses to construct trophies. This is similar to the first image that we see in the film, which is of corpses that are meticulously arranged on a monument. This immediately sets the tone for the film. Some of you may think that the corpses look gooier than they do real. I don't think that matters, so I'll put it this way. You watch it and try eating raisins. Now let's explore the story and characters. There really is no story. A group of young people drive to the countryside in order to visit the grave of Franklin and Sally Hardesty's grandfather. The kids enter a slaughterhouse and end up being murdered by a family of cannibalistic madmen. Despite the scant story, it's well constructed. The travelers meet two members of the slaughterhouse family before any of the real mayhem starts. This trick is a slow and effective trap that shows the audience that the victims were in danger from the beginning, and not just from when they entered the slaughterhouse. Early in the film, the kids pick up a mentally unstable hitchhiker who takes a picture, burns the picture, cuts himself, then cuts Franklin. After being ousted from the van, he smears his blood on the side. Initially, I thought this was simply a way of defacing the vehicle, but upon a second viewing, I'm inclined to think that the hitchhiker was marking the van as a target for murder, or maybe he was giving them a reason to stop at the gas station in town, a gas station that is owned by another member of the slaughterhouse family, the old man. The protagonist in the film is Sally Hardesty. This is mainly by default because she's the only person who survives the ordeal. Thus begins the slasher movie trend of the final girl. The only person who can best the assailants is one young lady. In essence, the film becomes her nightmare, which is the most interesting aspect of the narrative. The story is slim because nightmares are known for their ability to inspire terror and not complexity of plot. But the stars of the film are the slaughterhouse family. More time and effort are put into the formation of these characters and their motives than anyone else. Interestingly, the film becomes about something. The hitchhiker presents photographs of a technologically obsolete slaughterhouse. He then tells the kids that the newly advanced methods are putting hardworking people out of business. It becomes a film about people being oppressed by something that we see as progress. But then the question of motivation arises. Was the slaughterhouse family this demented before the business went under? An indication that they were insane while they were still butchering for profit is the surplus of cattle bones arranged in their home as debris, wind chimes, and furniture. That looks comfy. Of course, the cattle bones could be due to recent butchering, considering that the family runs a gas station that doubles as a barbecue pit, and the air surrounding the area smells of slaughter. Did the family kill people while the slaughterhouse was still operating? Personally, I choose to believe that the slaughterhouse was an outlet for killing. It's not so much that they prefer to kill people, it's more the fact that cattle costs money, but people just passing through are free. So now they kill people to satisfy their bloodlust. Among the debris in their home are both human and bovine bones, showing that one is no better than the other. This also presents an interesting question as to the source of violence. It's also the beginning of a common horror film trope. The source of the violence is that the killers are born of a rural setting. The countryside is presented as a dangerous one. The first locals to whom we are introduced are spending their free time drinking in a cemetery. They may be guarding it due to the recent grave robbing, which makes them less creepy. However, the locals are all too eager to help Sally find her grandfather's grave. One of them practically drags her away. And then there's the drunk, which is hardly reassuring of the town's stability. Judging from the style of dress and the astrological literature that they read, the non-violent characters are from an urban area. The non-violence is further illustrated by the fact that they promptly lose Franklin's pocket knife, which represents their only means of conducting violence. Hooper's film became a classic not because of the ever-expanding sequels and remakes, but rather due to the slasher tropes that it established. The killer uses only close combat weaponry, that is, a chainsaw and a hammer. It's much more frightening to be chased down with a chainsaw than it is to be shot with a sniper rifle, or at least presumably it is. In later slasher films, this trope would become even lower tech by employing such weapons as a machete or a kitchen knife. There is no gasoline required to kill with those. Another slasher trope is the main killer's mask. Now the mask is primarily used to conceal the killer's humanity. Leatherface used his masks to take on different personas. When he first appears, he is prepared to slaughter something, and his face is presumably male. When he later appears, he is wearing a woman's face and is heavily covered in makeup. The Slaughterhouse family has no living female residents. I emphasize living because Grandma is long since passed, but she is still taking up space in the house. Therefore, someone has to assume the duties that are traditionally considered woman's work. Leatherface prepares the meal for the evening and also feeds the barely living grandfather. The gender confusion also reinforces the idea that the countryside is a dangerous place because it adds a murderous twist to the rural stereotype of incest. Finally, I'd like to point out the relation between comedy and horror. Both genres use gags that are intended to elicit an uproar of either laughter or screams. Texas Chainsaw is the perfect example because people tend to laugh at some of the more tense situations. It may be nervous laughter, but it proves that the gag works. Two of the film's more humorous moments include Sally's decision to leap without hesitation through a second-story window, and also the Slaughterhouse family's efforts to have the physically incapable grandfather use a hammer to kill Sally. It's demented, but it's funny. I don't believe that films should be rated higher just because they're classics. This film did have a driving intelligence that made it interesting. The visuals of murder and mayhem almost prevent the viewer from thinking while watching the movie, but there is a significant amount of thought put into it. Overall, the film has no real plot or character development, but it was such an interesting and successful attempt to put a nightmare on screen that I have to give it one more star than I originally intended. Therefore, I give Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching Horror Movie Rewind, and tune in next time for my review of the 1975 film, Jaws.